Are you sitting comfortably? Then let us begin. Welcome back to the Sovereign Way, to our weekly teaching. If you've been following for a while, you've seen that our first mastery in the Sovereign Way is remembering, which is to remember truth, to remember the truth of your nature, your quintessential, indestructible, invincible, perennial, never-ending spiritual nature. And the second mastery is recognizing the difference between that nature and all the constructed other things that you are and other things that seem to be occurring and actualizing in the world, and recognizing the difference between truth and falsehood. But neither of those two masteries matter at all unless you also have this third mastery, which is releasing. You see, you can remember that you are yourself, unchanging and unformed and forever lasting, and you can recognize the difference between truth and falsehood. But if you're not willing to let go of falsehood, to release the structures, to allow new things to take shape, then what's the point? What's the point in being the spiritual seeker loftily floating about on the winds of change, unless you yourself are practicing your spiritual authority to forgive and be forgiven? And time has come for you to restore innocence in your life right now. Restore the innocence to yourself, to your own self-awareness, and restore innocence in the lives of all others through your perception of them. Why? Because the world is changing rapidly. We haven't seen the worst of it yet, my loves, and nor have we arrived at the core of what we're collectively detoxing. It's bubbling up from the depths of darkness, isn't it? And there are wobbly times ahead. So we need to adapt quickly, and we need to make wise steps with a quick flourish of foot to establish the new world that we're dreaming of. We say change starts from within, and it does, but it needs to come from within, and it needs to be anchored into the new world. We can't sit around waiting for the kingdom to arrive. We need to be part of calling it out and establishing on good foundation. Now, as a culture, in the Sovereign Way, we are always for more wonder, for more awe, more magnetism, more miracle, more love. We are willingly leaning into the yearning, the longing that God is always calling us into. Because that's what the fabric of cosmic creation does. It expands, it unfolds, it grows. And when things fall apart, it's because new growth is always occurring. And our lives are full of obstructions to that flow. Our lives are full of structures that we crystallize and we attempt to make rigid and permanent. Identities, ideas, ideologies, rules and regulations and doctrines, judgments and standards, identities and plans and legacies. All of these things are human-made creations for the most part. In fact, my husband and I have recently come across this. We'd gathered support from a particular organization that was going to help us establish our new ministry. And when they looked at our statement of faith, they said, well, this isn't close enough to the doctrines of Christ as we understand them. So it didn't matter that we said yes to Trinity, that we said yes to salvation in Christ. It didn't look enough like the system of rule that they had made agreement with. And so they were willing to let go of an opportunity to serve, an opportunity to see growth, because it didn't match their idea of what was. Where in your life are you doing this? Where in your life are you holding these obstructions, these crystallized ideas in place and saying no thank you to opportunities and possibilities for astonishing new growth? But for the most part, you do a really good job meeting these obstructions and dealing with them. You do a good job on your inner work, your deep inner work. You're remarkably ascended compared to where you have been. You tend to your mind. You tend to your energy field. You make pretty decent choices for your health. And you're intending to do better still, to clear the obstructions, to clear the traumas, to clear the bad habits. And all of the crystallized ideologies that you're ready to rise up against, to tear down the patriarchy and to tear down the economy and to tear down the political system. And you're such a good rebel against what has been. But there are some things in your life that are sneakier. and harder for you to release. And these are the subtle resistances in the energy fields all around you. And they're all resulting from tiny mindset glitches in your blind spots, things that you haven't yet forgiven, and things that you don't actually want to forgive. We all have them. We all have these things. And I promise you that dissolving them, even though it may be painful because it involves tearing down some of your own beloved structures, dissolving them will bring truer energy fields into cohesion. They'll bring greater versions of yourselves into that laser beam of who you're interfacing as. It'll increase your magnetism. It'll enhance your radiance. It'll purify your soul song. And more importantly, it'll bring even more love to your relationships. The greatest gift of the Bible, in fact, its main message, and the most powerful of all the spells that you can embody from these sacred ancient teachings, is this one absolute truth that will never change. Nobody is immune to the need for release and forgiveness. And nobody is unforgivable or irredeemable. That's a promise. And if you're going to restore your own innocence in your own self-awareness, I guarantee that with that comes the release of all others and all actual occurrences from the meaning of the stories that you've spun around those people and the occurrences that have actualized in the space between you. So that means releasing yourself from the after effects of every transgression that ever existed in your life, and every idea that you're not where you should be because of this and that. And if you want to participate with the omnipresence of grace and miracle that is life in the kingdom, then you need to have the ability to see divine order. Let me say that in another way. If you're claiming to be somebody who's here to usher in the new world, you're here to herald the coming of a new dawn, you're here to participate in the promise of the establishment of the kingdom, and you're a light worker or an apostle or an ascending master or a lighthouse, a tower of goodness, and you're claiming for yourself this noble, noble vocation, then you need to be able to see divine order in all things as they are right here and right now. That's the alchemy of mercy. And that's not possible when your awareness is still influenced by traumas and stories of who did what to you. You see, and I know that you know this, but our experience of truth and our experience of life is warped by our perspective when that perspective is formed by pain and by the subconscious belief that something needs to be done to restore balance to the world. Do a quick check-in. Do you believe that something needs to be done to restore balance to the world? Do you believe that God doesn't know what he's doing and that you and yours in some way need to tear something down or put something right in order to restore balance? Do you not believe in balance? Now, we're not talking about passivity here. We're not talking about just submitting to the crap hand that you've been dealt in life, or bending over and taking it, or letting the world out there go to shit because it's probably God's will. That's not it at all. That's not what I'm saying. If you are called into some assignment, then you are called into that assignment, and there you go. But true forgiveness means releasing every ounce of meaning that you've invested into what has occurred and what is occurring. Here's a quick look of the sovereign model of human consciousness again. This is a quick look. So hang on, let's go here first. All these diagrams are available for you in the Sovereign Way group, by the way. So if you want to receive these diagrams again or do a deeper study, just reach out to Matthew. But core principle of the entire universe is that there are three elements: source, spirit, and substance. There's nothing else. There's just these three things, and they are the same thing, God, three distinctions recapitulated as one. So this is the Trinity. And it is source that commands the spirit to move the substance. So it's your knowing, it's your consciousness, it's your idea, your declaration, your decision that shapes the spiritual fabric that forms and manifests as matter, as material. So in order for anything new to occur, you need to be able to release what has already formed and allow a new formation to come about through the quantum field. So if we're looking at the sovereign model of human consciousness again, essentially that Trinity is this piece here, where we have God, which is all knowing, all loving, and all consciousness, which is the formation of everything that we are and everything everyone is. And then the aspect of that which is moving, which is power, which is constant creative power, that spirit, moves through your consciousness, which is like your framework of knowing. This is how you know the world to be and how you know yourself to be. And that spirit, that essence, takes on an energetic quality, a characteristic, or a vibrational output, you could say, and that's your energy field. And that's kind of like your fingerprint that goes out into the world. And then the world, the 3D world, arranges itself around these decisions. In the same way as if this was the sunlight, and this is a cathedral window, and that all your decisions about what is true and possible in life are like images in the stained glass window. And the sunlight projects those images onto the hard, manifest, actualized floor of your life. And that means that everything that you experience in life is a direct reflection and projection of what's going on in your subconscious world. This isn't new. We understand this. We understand that we create as we believe. We know that. But let me show you what that looks like in relationship. Let's have a quick look at what's going on when you come into relationship with another. First, do this visualization with me quickly. Be poised, be comfortable, close your eyes, and imagine that stained glass window. Imagine the sun coming through it. Take a quick look to scan that stained glass window. Honestly now, look at what are the images and the stories that are present in that stained glass window in your life right now, agreements that you've made about what's possible for you, things you haven't yet released. Oh, my sister's wrong about the thing that she said to me, or Stacey said that thing in 3rd grade still, or that trauma that I experienced when my first business failed, or whatever it might be. Look at that stained glass window and see that the sunlight, which is God's infinite creative spirit, is shining through that window, projecting an image down onto the floor. And understand that the projection there is your energy field, and the floor of the cathedral, that's the hard, manifest, dense experience of 3D life. And notice that you can scrub that floor all you like, but the projection will always take shape again. Now, look over there to your left. There's another window. That's the window of the one you're in relationship. It's your mother, or it's your father, or it's the one you haven't forgiven yet. And see that in that stained glass window, there's a whole other story, one that you're not privy to. And see that there's a projection coming out through that window, and that's also falling onto the floor. It means there's an entirely real life happening over there. A real life that is being experienced nanosecond by nanosecond as real by that one. Now notice what happens when these two windows come into contact with one another and these projections cross, and the formed projection on the floor crosses over one another, and they intersect. and they're laid over one another. Now, do you see that it's much harder to really make out what's going on because there are two entirely different stories laid on top of each other? That's relationship. That's relationship. So come back from that visualization now and look at the screen. Let's say that we take this model here and we lay it down horizontally like that. So what we get then is we get, this is your diamond, your cathedral window with all your stories in it. This is the entirety of your universe. Your whole lived experience is in there. And you don't know what's outside of it. You have no perception or prehension of what's outside of this lived experience of your universe. And over here is that other one's window. This is your sister or your mother or your former boss or your ex-boyfriend, the person who betrayed you so terribly. And this is their window. And this is the entirety of their experience. And this is everything they understand. This piece in the middle, this is relationship. This is where your universe and their universe intercepts. This is relationship. Now look and see that the space between your consciousness and the edges of your experience is occupied by energy. There's everything you think about the world, everything you feel about the world, and everything you think about what you feel about the world, and everything that the world triggers in you and what you think and feel about that. And here's everything that, I'm just going to say your sister. Here's everything that your sister thinks about the world, and everything that your sister feels about the world, and everything that your sister thinks and feels about what the world brings back to her as a reflection of what she's going through. But there's more in here, because there's also everything that you believe about what she believes, and what you think about what she believes, and what you feel about what you think about what she believes, and everything that comes back to you from life about what you believe about what you think about what she believes, and everything that she believes about what you believe, and everything that she thinks and feels about what she believes about what you believe, and everything that the life brings back to her about what she believes about what she thinks about what you believe. Because you see, she doesn't know what you believe, and you don't know what she believes. You only know what you believe about what she believes. And so look at this terrible mess in the middle. Look at this god-awful tangle right here. If you're trying to bring forgiveness into a particular occurrence that happens, this broken heart in the middle, if you're trying to forgive this broken heart through the tangle of everything that is being believed and believed about beliefs and projected into the space through two windows that are not pure, then you are going to have a heck of a time trying to untangle an impossible tangle. Because for the life of you, you will not come to the source of the matter. That's the problem. That's the problem. So often we're trying to forgive by untangling what we think occurred. But we're untangling what we think occurred from a perspective that is so muddied by all of these strands of frequency that occur in the infinitely complicated space of relationship. So what's the answer? The answer is mercy, of course. Mercy is one of your most important tools and frequencies that are available to you. Mercy is love applied to what has already been formed. It's love applied into what is already manifest out here. And when you place your own complicated consciousness underneath the intercessory field of one consciousness that is pure, that is always loving, always merciful, always understanding, always compassionate, then the entire situation is bathed in a frequency of 100% pure grace. Because this energy is not tangled and messy and full of difficult decisions that conflict one another. This energy is entirely good, which means that the energy that you're inside of when you're attempting to reconcile and bring mercy to something is entirely merciful. If mercy is love applied to what has already been formed, then imagine this most basic but most beautiful visualization of shining the light into the shadow. What happens to the shadow? Like that. That's the power of the alchemy of mercy. When you shine mercy into what has already formed, you immediately alter it. Now, mercy belongs to the spirit, but you get to wield it. You get to be an extension of spirits when you're merciful, when you're allowing forgiveness to occur simply by being in the presence of what needs forgiving. Now you're practicing an advanced level of alchemy. This is how you practice mercy. You look at the harm caused lovingly, and you know that this too is of God. This too is an expression of the divine. And you direct this knowing through the manifest, through the manifest experience of harm, the form of harm, through the vibration and the energetic quality of the harm, and through the consciousness and the idea of what harm has been caused. This is an advanced level of alchemy here. This is knowing. So you're knowing love through what has actualized. You're knowing love through the vibration of what is actualizing, and you're knowing love through the idea, the shape in your consciousness that allows the continuation of that harm being manifest. So you're mercifully dissolving the ties that bind you to that harm that has been caused. Now you forgive it. That's how you release. Let's look at a biblical protocol for true forgiveness. This is really cool. This is super simple. It makes perfect sense. You find it throughout the Bible, and it's the easiest thing to practice. And it really, really, really works. This is a biblical protocol for true forgiveness in 3 steps. Number 1, put the Lord thy God before all things. This is the first principle in everything. And it speaks to the point of vulnerability. It actually removes you. It removes you in your identity from all of the declarations about who you are and what's occurred. And it brings you to a place of poise. A place of poise where you can witness the meta view that I am is all things. So I am is even the thing that you are working on releasing. And your presence in truth and in love is the only place from which you can do any true energy work, especially forgiveness. You cannot effectively forgive from this point of view. You must come into poise. You must put the Lord thy God before all things. You must place yourself into I am perspective. You must get God vision. That's number 1. I am aware that this needs to be done, and I am willing for this to be done. Inside that step is also your confession, because that's your release from the need to be right. So when you place the Lord thy God before all things, you are in confession, and you can see, this is where I've misstepped. These are my transgressions. This is how I've contributed to the conflict inside of this ongoing thing. I have no control over what's going on over there, but I have influence by the nature of my presence. So step 1, put God first. Get God vision. Put your God glasses on. Get your sovereign lens out and look at the situation from a meta view. Step 2, this is the purification. This is the cleansing. This is the repentance. Poignantly, there are always 3 levels. You're clearing the form, you're clearing the vibration, and you're clearing the consciousness. Or you could say you're clearing the manifestation, you're clearing the energy, and you're clearing the idea. You're clearing what has already come to pass and therefore is a structure. You're clearing what is coming to pass and therefore is an energy. And you're clearing what may come to pass, which is the quantum potential. And your forgiveness must run through each of these layers. If you forgive one but not the others, it remanifests. So you're clearing all 3 layers. There are millions of techniques. Do some yoga, go to the beach, do some energy work, join the oasis in the sovereign way and actually get some training in some of the ascension techniques. There are loads of ways to do it. But significantly, step 1, get into God, put God first. And step 2, do the cleansing through these 3 layers. Step 3, this is really important, and this is where most people fall down and fail. Step 3, establish a new covenant. Make a new reality. You've cleared the old. Now you claim renewed sovereignty. You've got to do that bit. We put a poll into our group earlier today and said, what are the hardest things to clear? And unsurprisingly, many said betrayal from friends and families, but also a few people voted on the thing that keeps coming back in my life. I can't see, I let it go, I forgive it, I let it go, and then there we are again, facing the same thing, facing the same demon. And that's because we're missing this final step. So step number 1, I agree that this needs to be done. I bring myself into poise, into God view, and now I can see, I can confess, I can see what's happened on my end and on their end. And now I am intending to do this work to release this. Step 2, I do release it. I release it from form. I release it from vibration. I release it from mind. But step 3 needs to come in, which is making a new reality. Remember, this is the law of all creation. I've released the old sand dune of substance. I released the old agreement with what has occurred. Stacey said that thing to me in 3rd grade, and I'm still really pissed off about it. But I've released that now. But unless I use my spiritual authority to command the fabric of form to re-manifest anew and create a new story that I can live in here on this planet as an enlightened master on this planet, unless I re-establish a new covenant, then I'm going to keep re-manifesting it. So, in other words, 3 steps: poise, release, re-establish. How do you make a new covenant? Again, there are millions of ways that you can do that. Again, join the oasis with the sovereign way and actually learn the techniques for doing these and getting these things done in form. But suffice to say, follow these 3 steps and place them in Jesus Christ, who will make up the deficit in your mastery, and all things will be made new inside this body of Christ, inside this energetic intercessory field. And then, for the love of God, always end your work with Amen, the creative seal. So poise, release, reestablish. Because you know what? Nothing new will ever happen for you without forgiveness. And the great alchemy of life is that to accept reality is to forgive reality for being what it is. That's how we free ourselves from the entrapment of the past. Now, the genius of biblical revelation is that it doesn't deny the dark side of things. The Bible doesn't, it's not all happy sunshine all the time. Choose light and love, everybody. It doesn't deny the dark side of things, but it forgives failure and it integrates failing to achieve wholeness. It says it's through the forgiveness of sins that we experience salvation. Not around sin, not over sin, not avoiding sin, but through the forgiveness of sin that we experience salvation. Salvation, to be delivered into this kingdom that we are establishing right here and right now. Gorgeous alchemy. Turning agony into majesty. Look up Matthew 18:21-22. This is lovely. So the context of this is that Jesus had just been giving the Sermon on the Mount, and he'd just taught his people how to pray, and he'd included in the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. So he's asked us to include in our lifestyle forgiveness, so a way of being. And then a little bit later, Peter's sitting there, and Peter, one of his closest disciples, had a way about him. He was always asking questions. He was always challenging Jesus. He's always wanting to know more. He's always, twisting things around to see what is he going to say if I say it like this. And if you're a teacher or a coach, you should have students like that. That's why we've got a minister in the Sovereign Way called the Anointed Rebel. It really serves. So Peter says, yes, but how often is my brother going to sin against me? And how often should I forgive him? Because by this point, he had already forgiven and proven forgiveness 6 times. And at the time, the Jewish teachings were that you forgive 3 times. Forgive 3 times and then take them to court and take their goats and all the stuff like that. Peter had already done it 6 times, so he felt like a saint. So he goes, how many more times do I have to do it? Like 7, he says. Should I forgive 7 times? Seems like a big number, right? When you've been told your whole life that 3 is enough. And Jesus said to him, all right, Peter, I'm going to say to you, not just 7 times, but 70 times 7 times. That's how often you're going to forgive. Now, the term 70 times 7, which we first encounter in Genesis 4:24, doesn't mean 490 or whatever it is, right? Someone do some quick math. Is it 490? It's around about, yeah. It doesn't mean that. It's a magical number. It means an uncertain, indescribable amount, a number that isn't even a number. It's not actually a number, it's actually an infinity. So basically, Jesus is saying, you will forgive as many times as it takes to create an alchemical effect that dissolves the need for forgiveness. In fact, make forgiveness a natural part of your lifestyle. Be grace, be mercy, be the extension of that infinite frequency that turns any agony into majesty. And in fact, I'm going to point directly to this philosophy when I look at how my husband Matt and I have had 13 years of happy and successful marriage without ever once having an argument. We've never had an argument in 13 years. And this is why. Because we instantaneously remember the truth, recognize the story, and then release the story. We forgive immediately in ourselves and each other. Because, we're never done with this process of falling and getting back up again. And if we're going to participate in the flow of mercy and grace, we need to extend that same flow towards others. We need to be a participant in that flow of mercy. The Spirit within us creates an unrelenting desire towards forgiveness and reconciliation. That's a part of the kingdom, and that's what we want. One of the core principles of sovereign is that the primary actualizing agency in the human consciousness is a desire to know God. That's what you want. Whether you have this languaging or not, that's what's calling you forward, to be reconciled with that essence of grace. And the entire gospel, of course, reveals the unfolding mystery of forgiveness. It's the beginning and the middle and the end of the gospel's transformative message. Forgiveness as a way of life is constant renewal. It is constant poise and constant allowing of new things to take shape. It's an investment in spiritual possibility, not in structure of actualized occurrences. And in fact, the energy of being forgiven without proper restoration, punishment, balanced jurisdiction, litigious language, just pure forgiven. That's what frees us from that merit badge mentality that calculates and assesses systems of what's deserved and undeserved, who's done what, and who needs to change in order for me to experience the fullness of God's love. And the ongoing experience of being forgiven, when we don't even think we need it, renews our flagging spirit and keeps us in that infinite ocean of grace. Forgiveness given and forgiveness received are always the pure work of uncreated grace. This is an unearned and undeserved forgiveness that breaks down the quid pro quo of meritocracy. So no more can you say that politicians, capitalists, socialists, atheists, religious freaks, big pharma, my sister, Stacy in third grade, my father, my children's spouses, they're all in the wrong and I'm in the right. And nor can you say, hang on a minute, I'm the villain here. I'm the villain because they're all a reflection of me, which means I'm the villain. None of that applies. None of that is real because grace recreates all things. Nothing new happens without forgiveness. We just keep repeating the same old patterns, illusions and half-truths. But mercy, that's your alchemy. So the protocol is poise, release, and reestablish. I'm going to give you an example from the Bible. This is Psalm 51. This is King David offering himself for forgiveness. And it comprises of these three parts. Number one is his confession, his poised confession, because we have to acknowledge and look at the truth of what we're wanting to be redeemed from or what we want to redeem someone else from. And then cleansing, the actual act of penitence. And then the third piece is the consecration, which is making it so, establishing a new reality. So the psalm is based on an incident that's recorded in the second book of Samuel, 12:13. You can go and you can read that chapter and you can see how terribly David has sinned. And then he's been called out on that sin. He's been called out on a terrible act. Shall I break it down quickly? Why not? He fancied this woman. She was married to another dude. So he slept with her anyway and killed the guy. And then his chap Samuel came to him and said, dude, can you, someone's done this thing. He didn't mention any names. He said, someone fancied a woman, slept with her, killed her husband. What do you think we should do about it? King David said, that's awful. You should murder the man. And Samuel said, well, mate, it was you. And so Psalm 51 is when David has taken that. He's received that. He's been called out and he's received it. And he's created this song. By the way, can you imagine composing a song about your worst failure and then making it public for all time? How cool is that? You see, David was no longer concerned about what the people thought about. He was only concerned about truth. He wanted to be clean before God. So I'm going to read this to you. Listen to the aching heart that knows that it's time to reconcile. And since we're all one, this is your heart also calling. So listen and notice the three-part song Notice the poised observation and need for forgiveness. Notice the cleansing, and notice the reestablishing of a new covenant. Be comfortable. God, give me mercy from your fountain of forgiveness. I know your abundant love is enough to wash away my guilt, because your compassion is so great. Take away this shameful guilt of sin and forgive the full extent of my rebellious ways. Erase this deep stain on my conscience. I know that you delight to set your truth deep in my spirit. So come into the hidden places of my heart and teach me wisdom. Purify my consciousness. Make this leper clean again. Wash me in your love until I am pure in heart. Satisfy me in your sweetness, and my song of joy will return. The places you have crushed within me will rejoice in your healing touch. Hide my sins from your face. Erase all my guilt by your saving grace. Keep creating in me a clean heart. Keep creating in me a clean heart. Fill me with pure thoughts and holy desires, ready to please you. May you never reject me. May you never take from me your sacred spirit. Let my passion for life be restored, tasting joy in every breakthrough you bring to me. Hold me close to you with a willing spirit that obeys whatever you say. Then I can show the other guilty ones how loving and merciful you are, and they will find their way back home to you, knowing that you will forgive them. Oh God, oh my saving God, deliver me fully from every sin, even the sin that brought blood guilt. And then my heart will once again be thrilled to sing the passionate joys of deliverance. Lord God, unlock my heart, unlock my lips, and I will overcome with my joyous praise. For the source of your pleasure is not in my performance or the sacrifices I might offer you. The fountain of your pleasure is found in the sacrifice of my shattered heart before you. You will not despise my tenderness as I bow down humbly at your feet. And when we are fully restored, you will rejoice and take delight in every offering of our lives as we bring our sacrifices of righteousness before you in love. That's Psalm 51 by King David. Do you hear that the forgiveness wrapped up in this beautiful song of agony and promise, that the forgiveness in it reveals three goodnesses simultaneously? Number one, when we forgive, we choose the goodness of the other over their faults. And so we're enhancing and magnifying God in the kingdom. We also experience God's goodness flowing through ourselves. So we become a part of that channel, instantaneously washed by that same mercy that we're extending. And we also experience our own capacity for goodness in a way that almost surprises us. We're finally in touch with a much higher power, and we slowly learn to draw upon this infinite source. So it becomes not just an act that we do, but it becomes a lifestyle, a way that we be. And I can't promise you that the pain that you've been through will leave easily or quickly. To forgive is not to forget. And we're not seeking to diminish the sacredness of the hardship that we get to walk with in life. But letting go frees up a great amount of soul energy that liberates a level of life that you didn't know existed. Because guess what? Your awakening was not the end of it. It keeps getting better and better and better and better. It leads you to to a truer self, a truer and truer self, a high resolution love affair with life as you dance the free dance through the kingdom of heaven. And now I'm going to finish with a lovely reading by, well, the reading's by me, but the poem is by John O'Donoghue. He's my favorite mystic. And these are his words that he's chosen, and he's arranged these words in that same ontological biblical protocol. And I want you to really receive both the agony here and also the light. This is his work called For Someone Awakening to the Trauma of His or Her Past. And here we go. For everything under the sun, there is a time. This is the season of your awkward harvesting, when the pain takes you where you would rather not go, through the white curtain of yesterdays to a place you had forgotten you knew from the inside out, and a time when that bitter tree was planted that has grown always invisibly beside you, and whose branches your awakened hands now long to disentangle from your heart. You are coming to see how your looking often darkened when you should have felt safe enough to fall toward love, how deep down your eyes were always owned by something that faced them through a dark fester of thorns, converting whoever came into a further figure of the wrong. You could only see what touched you as was already torn. Now the act of seeing begins your work of mourning, and your memory is ready to show you everything, having waited all these years for you to return and know. Only you know where the casket of pain is interred. You will have to scrape through all the layers of covering, and according to your readiness, everything will open. May you be blessed with a wise and compassionate guide who can accompany you through the fear and grief until your heart has wept its way to your true self. And as your tears fall over that wounded place, may they wash away your hurt and free your heart. May your forgiveness still the hunger of the wound, so that for the first time you can walk away from that place, reunited with your banished heart, now healed and freed, and feel the clear, free air bless your new face. Thank you very much for coming today and for receiving this important teaching on the third mastery in the sovereign way, releasing. If you want to work with me directly to move on, to let it go, let me know, reach out, and we will examine the links between consciousness and energy and form, and we will clear the ties that bind. So if you're ready to move on and you need an assist, you need a compassionate guide, reach out to me directly or reach out to Matthew or Maria in the sovereign way, and we'll set up a call. So thank you very much for joining today. May you be forgiven, and may you instantaneously forgive and be free, as John O'Donoghue writes, to feel the clear, free air bless your new face. Now I turn off the live stream and I open the table for discussion here in the live Zoom room. Thank you for joining.